Do you want a financially secure future, not just for yourself, but for your loved ones as well? This is Generations of Wealth, the podcast that breaks down the most effective wealth building strategies you can easily apply to your own life. Join investor and international best-selling author Derek Dombeck in exploring practical tips and sound advice on building a profitable business, creating a powerful brand, or getting into the thriving world of real estate investing. This is your chance to create your very own financial roadmap to live your vision, love your life. Let's begin this discussion with your host, Derek Dombeck.
Welcome to the Generations of Wealth show. I'm your host, Derek Dombeck. This is the show where we talk about how you can live your vision, love your life. And today's guest is going to do exactly that in a way of helping you run your real estate business without having to deal with the transaction coordination on the end. His name is David Olds, but before I bring him on, I just wanted to mention how much I appreciate you coming back to listen to our show, watch our show. Anything you can do to share it, like it, give us 5-star reviews on whatever platform you're finding us on. Or if you're just going to thegenerationsofwealth.com and following us there, that's fantastic. Also, if you're looking for a place to really build your network and take your business and your life to the next level, we are looking for a few qualified people to join the Circle of Trust, the mastermind that I host and I run. So if that's something of interest to you, go to reicot.com. Answer a few quick questions. We'll jump on a call and we'll see if it's a fit. So now on to the show. Well, Mr. David Olds, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the show today. If you wouldn't mind, just give everybody a little bit of background about who you are. We met not too long ago, but you've got your own podcast, which is the David Olds Podcast.
Yeah.
I was a guest on your show. And happy to have you on the Generations of Wealth show. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Derek, thanks for having me, man. Yeah, my story, I don't feel like I've got this super crazy story. Like I wasn't on drugs. I didn't, fall out
There's
of
still time, David. There's still time.
So I always said, if I could just do like maybe a little cocaine or meth, it would just thin me right out. I'd be as skinny as you, but getting off of it would be the problem, right? That's always going to be the issue, right? So, yeah, man, I sort of fell backwards into real estate a little bit. Growing up in Boston, my parents were big like house fixer up, like their own house, like doing remodeling and stuff on their own house, working in the yard, doing that stuff, which of course as a kid you hate it, right? The one thing I would always say is when I grow up, I'm not going to make my kids do any of this stuff, right? Because we had an acre in almost on the New Hampshire border. So, what you do all years feels like is all you do is ever rake leaves. But yeah, so hated it. My dad like put an addition on and I'm hanging drywall, just miserable about all of those things. But, what do most of us do? We grow up and become our parents. So I got married in 2002 to my ex-wife, but my wife at the time, and we bought a house. And what's the first thing we did? Tore out the carpet, put in laminate, took out a slider, put in French doors. We did all the things to update it because I was working for a home improvement company, kind of like it was Scotty's Hardware, but very similar to Home Depot at the time. But anyways, so I sold that 2 years later and made like $50,000, and I was like, oh my God, like this is great. Like I didn't have to pay taxes on it because I lived in the property and it was homesteaded. So I thought to myself, wow, this is cool. Let's do this again. So did it again. Did this other house. We bought an ugly house in a beautiful neighborhood and sold that one about 30 months later and made almost 100,000. So I'm like, wow, like I need to figure this out. So I remember I was at the airport waiting on someone to come in, leaning in the bookstore on the shelf, flipping through books, and come across the most cliche thing ever, right? Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Almost every investor all started the same way. So I'm reading that. I'm like, this is a great book. This makes perfect sense to me. So that was really how I got started. At the very end of the book, Kiyosaki says, go find a real estate meetup or RIA, something like that. So I found the one in Orlando and just got super involved. And this was back before YouTube and great podcasts like this and just all the ways that we can get information. Back then it was just the RIA, like a RIA or a book that you buy at the library. That was how you learned about real estate. So yeah, got involved there, just went to all the classes, bought mentoring, bought coaching, just did everything I could. And my wife and I both still worked full-time jobs then. And, the only thing really that we could do was keep buying and selling houses, fixing them up. Would not only buy one to live in, but would buy one to go ahead and fix up and resell. So we did that through, the next maybe 3, 4, 5 years until, 2008, and the market's starting to slow down. And we didn't know it was going to crash like it crashed, but we felt like that there was a little bit of a slowdown coming. So I bought my last house in Deltona, Florida. So let me tell you this house. So it's a 3 bedroom, 2 bath brick ranch house in the central Florida. Like they're all the same. So the day I buy it, it was a probate deal. I got it for 97,000. Right. So let me ask you if you think this is a good deal. So I bought it for 97,000. One block over, 2 blocks down, and identical house. Even left-hand garage, everything. Identical house just sold for 214. So 97, you're like, that's a deal. That's a deal, right? Great. So I bought it in like maybe August, and we knew we were going to move someplace. We've been looking at other cities. Actually, it started out we just wanted to invest in other cities, and then we decided we were just going to move. So, which was Chattanooga, Tennessee. So this is our last deal. It's like musical chairs, right? It's the last chair we're going to sit in. We're going to make some money, and we're going to jet out of town. And so, close on it in August, fixing it up. Back then, I was younger and more energy and skinnier, so scraping ceilings, putting down tile, I made my own kitchen cabinets, put them out together out of the box, made my own countertops, did all the things. So I finished it in like early November, and I call my realtor, Shayna. I'm like, hey, I'm all done with this house. And she's like, okay, great. But it's the holidays. Nobody buys a house. So I don't really want to list it and get you a bunch of days on market. Let's just list it in January. I'm like, perfect. No problem. So she comes over like January 2nd or 3rd. She walks in. She's like, oh my God, you did a great job. I'm like, I know. She's like, it looks beautiful. I'm like, I know, like it's great. And I said, what do you think we could sell it for? So she sits down again, 2009, like Facebook barely is invented, right? So flips open this notebook, lots of pages flipping back and forth. And well, this one sold for this. And I'm like, oh, well, what can we sell it for? She's like, yeah, probably like 147. I'm like, well, wait a minute, like one block over to 214. Remember? Yeah, that was 6 months ago. That was 6 months ago. So like that was pretty hard to accept. And still at the time, I consider myself a new investor. I'd probably only done, 12 or 14 deals. I'm like, well, but Shayna, my house is nicer. My house is better. Those were foreclosures. Like you could clearly see the pictures, like people had abandoned them in the middle of the night and they were selling for 120, 130. And she's like, yeah, but that's what's on the market right now. I'm like, oh my God. So like just shell shocked sitting there, like $50,000 had just gone, like gone. And all those houses I've been remodeling, they were, we put them on the market, they'd sell easily within 30 days. So this was like new. This was a new little conundrum. So I'm like, okay, well, I'd already given my job notice. I was planning on leaving in 6 months, one way or the other. So I thought I was the most magnanimous SOB that's ever walked the face of the earth. And I'm like, all right, I'll do it for 155. I'm like 50 grand in my pocket. I can live with that. And she's like, okay. I'm like, do you think that'll do it? She's like, I don't know. Because she was a listing agent, right? They don't care. They just
Mm-hmm.
they just want to put their sign in the yard and out they go. So 155, 154.9, whatever it was, and literally not a single call in the month of January. Nothing. And at the time I had teenage boys, so every day, I don't know if you've ever sold a house where you got kids and you're cleaning the house. Like every day it's got to be clean because you think that's the day someone's gonna come by and look at your house. And nothing. So February, I'm like, hey, what should we do? Like, I'm not like nervous yet, but I'm like, this is out of the ordinary. And she's like, well, you need to lower the price. I'm like, oh, man, you really think 147 is a number? No. I'm like, well, what do you mean? You told me 147 was a number. Yeah, that was last month. I'm like, well, what should it be now? She's like, I don't know, maybe like 139. Like, this is how fast the market was falling. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, 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 no. I'll do 147 and that will get it because my house is fully remodeled. Like, it's beautiful. So again, another month, a couple calls, but not even a showing. So now I'm at the end of February and like I've told my job I'm leaving. I'm like, this is crazy. So I call her back in March and I'm like, hey, like seriously, I got to sell this house. What do we got to do? She's like, I mean, if you really want to sell it, probably 125. I'm like, 120, like I'm not going to make any money by the time this is done. I'm gonna make nothing. I'm like, I can't do that. That's dumb. So because I had been to all the RIAs and gone to classes and done all the things, I'm like, oh, I can sell this on owner financing, right? I'll do a lease option. So I went out, bought a bunch of signs, hand wrote them. Oh, no banks needed. Owner will finance 5K down, 3-2 Deltona, and so put out a bunch of those signs. Still, it was a struggle. And finally, in like May, I found a person who I'd like this nurse that had a job but couldn't qualify for a loan, and she gave me $5,000 down. I was leasing it to her. I think I was making like $12 cash flow. Such a great first rental. And that was literally how we left Tennessee, or how we left Florida to come to Tennessee with $5,000. It was me, my wife, our two boys, and three fat dogs, and my brother, because he was going to come up and work with us. He's like 11 years younger than me. And that's how we came to Tennessee. And then, I had been going back and forth. My brother was staying up here. We had bought one duplex sub two by taking over a mortgage. And then we were getting ready to buy this other house. And I don't know, you probably bought a lot of houses. And sometimes when you walk through one and you haven't seen it for like a month and a half or 2 months, like your memory gets a little fuzzy, right?
Mhm.
Of what that house was, because you look at so many. So I hadn't seen this house in like 6 weeks. It was in East Lake, Chattanooga area of Chattanooga, which is not the best area. And but like, and even when I contracted, I didn't think that was where I was going to move. It just kind of worked out that that was the house that we had. So that was where we were going to move up to. So 577 miles we drive, like two cars, the moving van, like kids, dogs, the whole thing. It's a horrendous day. Get to Chattanooga just in time to go to the title company, pay for the closing out of my 5 grand, right? That's what I've got because my wife had been laid off, months before. We go to this house, and dude, I pull in and I'm like, oh my God, what a shithole. I'm like, this place is bad. Like, it had been empty for probably a year because the guy we bought it from got married. That's why I didn't need two houses. But like, it's kind of on the side of Missionary Ridge. So like the floors are a little uneven. It was a 1900s house, no air conditioning. One of the poles was out, so half the electricity wasn't working. Again, empty for a year. Like one of the doors didn't close tight. So there's like a mouse running through. Like, it was terrible, man, and everybody's just exhausted and cranky. So everything we could do to pull like two mattresses out of the truck, throw them on the ground with like an oscillating fan. And dude, I'm gonna tell you, I laid there that night and I'm like, what on earth have I done? Right? Like I could have found another job in Florida. I had this great house that we had just remodeled, beautiful neighborhood, and I left all of that to come to Chattanooga to do real estate. And I'm in this house, like, and I'm gonna tell you, man, like I cried myself to sleep that night. It was the worst thing ever. I'm like, what a terrible husband, father, all the things, right? Like, how do you uproot your family and come to this place? And it's this, right? Like this terrible house. And it was I remember like I've never felt so low in my life, right? Like, what a horrible decision I've made.
Did you say
And
that was August? Did you say that was August?
it's June. June was when we moved. Yeah, I bought it
June.
August. It took
So
me till May the next year to sell it, and then it was June, which is hot in
yeah, I
Chattanooga.
was gonna say, so you're in a house with no air conditioning,
No air.
a fan in June, and I was just in Tennessee a
Yeah,
week and a half ago in
it's
June,
hot.
and yeah, it was miserable.
Yeah,
So good Lord.
yeah.
Yes,
So
you were a terrible husband, a terrible father for
I
sure.
was. I'm gonna tell you, like I really was. I'm like, geez, man. I'm like, I've never claimed to be the best guy, but this is like, what am I doing? This is stupid. And you wake up the next day though, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna figure this out. Like, I'm gonna go get some blank bandit signs, and I'm gonna go put out signs to say we buy houses, and I'm gonna figure this out, right? Like, there's gonna be a way, or like, you've got to make money. You got a wife, two boys, and three fat dogs. Like, there's got to be a way to do this. And it was sort of, I look back at it now and I see those memes on Facebook, like burn the boats, right? Burn the bridge behind you. And I'm like, don't do that if you have a family and kids. It's dumb, right? It's incredibly dangerous and irresponsible. And luckily it worked out for us, but like it was like it could have gone horribly wrong too, you know?
But
Uh,
there's something to be said for
yeah,
having your back against the wall. You
sure.
had no option than to
No,
succeed
no,
versus people that are comfortable
yeah.
and yeah, maybe I'll work today, maybe I won't work today on my real estate business. but you didn't
No,
have a choice. And I had the same struggles when 2007 kicked my ass and took our entire portfolio. It was
yeah,
the same thing.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, and what was interesting is when I was in Orlando, I took a bunch of wholesaling classes, and people laugh when I tell them this now, they don't believe it. Like I couldn't make wholesaling work in Florida, which is crazy because there's so many buyers. But it was because I had a job making like 90 grand a year back then. My wife had a job probably making 45 or 50 grand. Like we were good. Plus we were flipping a couple houses a year. Like we didn't have to make it work, you know.
yeah.
Whereas up here and now after, I've wholesaled probably 15, 1,600 houses. Like when we got here, like I had to find a way to make it work. There was no other option. So yeah, I attribute that to kind of a lot of our success is just sheer desperation and just being too dumb to quit. Like we've got to figure out. I know that this works. I've seen a million people wholesale. I've seen the checks. I've seen, I know that the process works. I have to believe in that enough, and I'm desperate, right? Like my kids want new shoes to go to school in September, right? And my wife surely likes to have some food to cook. But yeah, that first summer was a little bit tough.
Well, and to replace $140,000 of
Yeah,
income takes a lot of wholesaling
yeah,
back then, because
yeah. They were 5, 6, $8,000 deals.
that's what I was just going to say. We weren't
Yeah.
cutting $50,000 wholesale checks back in
No,
2008 and 9.
no,
So,
no, no. My God, I remember some people would talk about like a $20,000 check you would double close.
and that was
And
huge.
it was huge back then, right? I remember like our first year, we ended up doing almost 30 deals in the first full calendar year. So we came out of the gate hustling. Um, but yeah, I think our average was like 54 or 5,600. Like it wasn't a ton. So I
Mhm.
mean, we had to do just a lot of deals. Um, but yeah, I mean, the thing that made us successful is real estate was the first thing I thought about in the morning when I woke up. It was the only thing I did during the day, and it was the last thing I thought about when I went to bed. Um, we certainly, of course, we did some family stuff on the weekends and took the kids hiking and took them to like swim in the rivers and things because we were too broke to go to any amusement parks. But put out signs every Friday night. Every single Friday night, we went out and put out at least 100 bandit signs. During the week, it was driving for dollars, and then my wife was sending out handwritten postcards because we couldn't afford to buy postage from anybody, right? Handwritten yellow letters. I mean, we just literally bootstrapped this thing from nothing and just willed it into existence.
Which is amazing because honestly, that's what probably built camaraderie and the
Mhm.
bond with you and your kids and your wife.
Yeah, yeah,
Not without
absolutely.
stress
Yeah,
and probably some shouting once in a while, but it is true. I mean, my 17-year-old daughter handwrites our letters right now.
really.
I she wants to be involved in a business. I said, that's great. You start in a mailroom.
There you
That's
go.
that's how it goes. You don't go to the top of the food chain because you got the same last name. It
That's
doesn't
right.
work that way.
Right. Yeah. No, my kids loved one of them, when we were rehabbing, loved tearing stuff apart, helping me do the physical stuff. The other one, he wanted no real part of it. He wanted to be playing on his little Game Boy and stuff. So
Hmm.
yeah, so that's how we got started. Originally when we had the idea of coming to Chattanooga, we wanted to buy multifamilies and apartments and just like everybody else. But if you go back, you remember this because you've been around, like banks were not lending money. Nobody was lending money. They were very interested in just taking properties back. That was their thing, and then getting the properties they took back off the books. So, buying properties, to rent wasn't really like I couldn't use banks, right? Also, I couldn't rehab anymore because what do you do with a rehabbed house? You sell it to an end buyer. Nobody was buying, right? Remember Obama had to do like the $8,000 credit just to get people to start buying houses again. So that wasn't an option. So I'm like, well, we'll wholesale. We'll just do this. And then, one of the things I realized, so even within our wholesaling business, we're going out, we're talking to people, and I would come to you, and let's say you had this house and you wanted 80,000, but my cash offer is, 60, right? Because that's how things were back then. Um, and we did some sub two deals, right? So I probably if I knew what I knew now, or I knew where the market was going to go, I'd have bought 1,000 sub twos, right? Like everyone you
Hmm.
talk to, like I was never worried about buying negative equity. That really didn't bother me too much, or being, at zero equity. But I just always wanted to make sure that it would cash flow, that I was sure I could get the thing to cash flow. So but yeah, I'm going out and talking to people and, they want 80, I want to offer them 60. But they're like, hey, but my mortgage is 75, right? So they couldn't take those offers, right? Um, so that was frustrating. Like I was going out a lot of appointments where that was happening. And one day it hit me. I'm like, well, damn, because every so often I'd come across somebody who owned something free and clear. And I'm like, well, God, if they could all just be free and clear, that'd be great, right? They may not like my offer, but at least they could accept it. You know what I mean? So I remembered way back in the day in Orlando when I was at this one of the million marketing courses or whatever I went through, and they talked about the percentage of houses that are owned free and clear in the United States. You have any idea what that is? What the percent is? Most
At
people
the,
don't.
at that time, it was
It,
probably close to 60%, 50 to 60%.
it's been pretty steady for the last 20 years, and it's anywhere between 38 and 42%. It's been
Okay.
very, very consistent for the last 20 years. So you guess higher than most people. So I'm like 40%. Like, shoot, that's a lot of people. Why don't I just do mailings to those people? Right? Of course, we're still putting out bandit signs, so we're going to get some other stuff, but like, why don't I just mail to those people? Because I'm getting tired of being rejected, right? I feel like I'm wasting my time. So that's what we did. We started pulling free and clear lists, and the number's still the same. I looked it up maybe like 4 months ago. First American keeps great stats on this. So so I started, talking to more people who own their properties free and clear, which is a lot of landlords. And I'd go out and I'd talk to them like, hey, I know you want 60 or 80, but I've got 60, and my closing percent went up, right? Because I mean, just naturally people could accept what I was offering. But then, I started thinking about it a little bit more. And, if you're a good negotiator, right? And I know you are, like 1 out of 10 is good. Like if you talk to 10 people and you get one, like you're a freaking rock star. 1 out of 8, holy smokes, you're in the Hall of Fame, right? So that's great, 1 out of 10. But my brain goes, well, what about the other nine? Right? Like that means, I know it's great, but still, what about the other nine? So then I started asking the question, I would make my offer, especially when I knew it was free and clear, and landlords. God, I love to do this with landlords. And I'd be like, well, you sure, Derek? You sure, 60, it's really, it's a cash offer, it's what your house qualifies for, all those things. Okay, great. Can't do that. Hmm. Man, I really like to buy these for cash. I like just buy them and be done with it. But man, let me ask you a question. Do you need all the money at once? Right. And that's once I figured that out once. And the long delay was because I was too nervous to ask.
Mm.
Right. Like imagine asking your first girl out, right? You're like, it takes a while to get it out. But I realized by having that long delay and it being like the first time I'd ever thought about it, it just helped me build a lot of rapport. But hey, do you need all the money at once? And sometimes they would say yes, sometimes they would say no. But what it did was it gave me another bite at the apple on those nine. Right. So because if it's free and clear before you go over there. So so yeah, I mean, and there was a ton more to it, how we'd kind of position that the conversation, especially if it was a landlord. But what started happening is no, no, I mean, I don't know. What are you thinking? And that opened up a ton of doors. And that's how we bought over 100 properties in like 5 years, all with owner financing. So um so that was really, for us, how we created our real wealth was that way in doing those deals. And my positioning, because I was, oh geez, about 40 at the time, right? So, and I remember always growing up in my life the whole time like I'm going to retire when I'm 50. Right?
Hmm.
So now I'm 50, 52, still not retired, but my thought process was, how do I get to the end? How do I get to the end as quick as I can? Right? And that came from a great mentor of mine who really taught us that. So every time I looked at these properties, because I had a good wholesaling business, right, where we're making, 100, 200, 300,000 a year over time, or we got up to those amounts, I didn't necessarily need the cash flow, right? So the way that I looked at these properties is, and, for people who are listening, when you're working out an owner carry or owner finance deal with a seller, you can make whatever terms you want.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be 30 years. It doesn't have to be 8%. It could be 1%, 5 years, like whatever term you two agree to. So what I was trying to do is I'm like, well, I really wanted to retire when I was 50. So really wanted everything paid off. I'm like, well, that's not realistic. Some of these deals, like to be cash flow positive. Like 20 was the shortest I could shrink them down to.
Yeah.
Some were 5, some were 10, some were 12. There was a variety, but the most I would ever go, if I couldn't make it work in a 20-year term, I was not going to buy it, right? Because I wanted to be done for sure by the time I was 60. So what happened is over these years, sometimes it was one property, sometimes it was 10 properties. One time it was 27 properties, 27 doors that I bought for almost 1.1 million. But I was able to make a deal where it was zero down, 1.125 million, something like that, a 4% interest rate, and I put it on a 17-year term. Why? Because I was 43 at the time.
Hmm.
And I did not want to, I refused to go past age 60, because I didn't want to be doing houses and fixing, toilets and water heaters till I was 70, right? Um, so that was sort of how I approached all these things is, there's a horizon, I've got a definite end date. I want to get these things done. If I can squeeze and compress and accelerate the amortization, enough, then I will buy this deal. And we just got really, really good at buying those types of deals.
Do you ever go back after you have the seller financing transactions and try for a second bite at the apple? Meaning,
Sure. Yeah.
can you talk about that? I mean, people
Mhm.
that know me know that I do that, but
Yeah.
let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. For me, one thing that I do actually regret is that I sold a bunch of these properties over the years. Sometimes it was, I'll tell you, I had this one in North Chattanooga, which is like the really expensive area, and I bought it before it popped. I bought this property for, yeah, 25, 30 maybe. I don't even remember what it was. I bought it for something ridiculously cheap. And I had the property, was really close to being paid off. It was maybe like a 10 or 12-year term. And I had one tenant in it the whole time. And she finally moved out, and it was a wreck, honestly. And at the time, I did not have the money to put $100,000 into remodel, because now it had to be remodeled really, really nice. So I went ahead and put it on the market. It sold for like 147, 149. It's in my course. I can't remember, but like I was gonna walk with like 120,000. So I remember the girl's name was Sarah Stansfield, something like that. So I've got like a closing date, like we're ready. And the title company's like, I need a payoff. I'm like, great. So I email, I'm like, hey Sarah, because we didn't talk. She did everything through email. I'm like, hey, good news. I came across a little bit of money. I'd love to be able to cash you out. Let's say I owed her like 21,000. I'm like, hey, I got 16,000. I can pay you out right now if you're interested. And she almost instantly emails me back. I've never had this happen before. I would love if you pay me off. And here's she knew the exact amount. Like she literally, like she had the amortization pinned to her wall. You owe me $22,374.62, and that's what I'll be willing to accept. I'm like, okay, fair enough. But yeah, lots of times we would go back and do that. Hey, I've come into a little bit of money. I'd love to pay you off if I could. And it worked all but once, and
Hmm.
I mean, I wasn't trying to give him a 50% haircut, but if I could take, another 5 or 6 grand off, 10 grand off,
Yeah.
depending on how much I owed, fantastic. It's kind of like a little short sale an owner carry deal. But
Well,
yeah,
and what people don't realize is at the time you bought the house, they were
mhm,
emotionally attached to the house.
sure. Yeah.
But months later, years later,
Hmm.
they're used to getting the payments, but
Yeah.
their life might change where the chunk of money makes sense and they take a discount. And
Yeah.
if they don't, who cares? You keep making the same payment. You
Right.
have nothing to lose by asking for the
No,
second
not at
bite.
all. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That 400, 800,000 bucks a month, whatever you're paying them. And then all of a sudden you call them and say, hey, I can give you 48,000. They're like, oh, you
Yeah.
know, 100%. So yeah, no, it's great. Great, great, great strategy.
So you kind of segue from there and you started your easy real, REI closings.
Yeah.
Talk about that because
Yeah.
that's a big part of your life right now.
Yeah, so kind of, what I was doing then is I was wholesaling. We were buying the rentals. As the market shifted in like 2014 and 15, we actually went back into rehabbing. So did a lot of rehabs over the next couple of years. I kind of had shifted probably to like 80% rehabbing, 20% wholesale. Brought in a young kid that just graduated college, super smart. His name was Justin. I brought him in and we cranked the wholesaling business back up so that we were like just absolutely dominating Chattanooga. And then I had another guy come in who wanted to be a partner, and he had just left his job in finance or something. So I'm like, great. Well, now there's essentially 4 of us, right? It was him, Justin, my wife, and me. And when you start chopping the pie up in fourths, it gets to be kind of small. So I'm like, well, maybe we just start virtual wholesaling, which wasn't even a term then. We're like, oh, we'll go to Birmingham and some other local cities. And that's sort of, how we started our nationwide wholesaling, which eventually we got up to 115 markets across the country. We were really big nationwide wholesalers. And, in doing that, and then I started doing some coaching, mainly on the disposition side. So I was really very, very heavy, on the second half of the business, right? I had a partner, them two handled the front side, and I really handled the back. So, I really got good at finding title companies, solving title problems, all of the struggles that I see people having. And from being in different masterminds, I sort of became like the go-to person for solving those kinds of things, right? Because when you do something for 10 years, you just get some experience, even if it's by accident. So, one of the things when we were running our wholesale business that happened, actually the room I'm sitting in was our transaction coordinator room. And I'm doing a lot of JV deals too. And I had the call one day from this guy. His name was Mario. And normally, if you do JV deals with somebody, they're going to do, two or three deals and then you'll never see them again, right? Because they're like, oh, I got some money now. I'm going to hire my own dispo person. Great. So Mario is this kid from Alaska and he was doing deals in Macon, Georgia, which was really weird. But he called me one day and we're talking. I'm like, hey, Mario, man, let me ask you a question. Like, we've done like 12 deals with you or something, right? Like, normally people just go off and do their own thing. Why do you keep coming back? Not that I enjoy taking, getting half the deal. That's really great. He's like, well, one, he says, my English isn't really that great. So he was a little nervous on the phone, but you deal with the title company too. And I don't like dealing with them. I don't like solving all the title issues. I'm like, huh, well, that's interesting. Then again, I was at this mastermind in Cozumel and they were talking about all the, the title issues that people were having. Cause this is, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, like virtual wholesaling like exploded,
Mhm.
and I was down there with probably some of the biggest wholesalers in the country. So it sort of dawned on me, I'm like, oh, like there are a lot of services in our industry, certainly marketing and bookkeeping and property management and all those things, but nobody that helps people close their deals, right? Most coaches are just like, well, just find a title company and they'll do everything for you, which is not the truth, right? In the end, it's still the investor who's chasing down trust documents and death certificates. And if you're doing that, what are you not doing? Talking to
Yeah,
sellers, buyers, making money,
absolutely.
right? So I thought, well, if we could find an effective way to do that as a service for people, right? Because we're already doing it for our JV partners, like, would that help people? Would that be a benefit? And could we make money doing that? So I talked to one of my friends, his name Corey Geary. He's one of the first people to bring out novations to everybody. And he's like, dude, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. I'm like, well, what do you mean is dumb? He's like, that transactions is like, it's like brain damage. I'm like, I know. I'm like, I think we can help people with that. We're really good at it. I already had a team of coordinators. Like, I was good at it. I'm like, they're good at it. Like, I think we could do this. And maybe we could get 10 or 15 clients and, we could turn this into a little business. And it just absolutely exploded. Now we've got a couple of hundred clients. We have 18 coordinators in our office here. Like, it keeps growing. Like, we're literally interviewing new coordinators every single day to bring into our team because we realize it is a thing that people need. And they don't love it, right? Nobody read Rich Dad Poor Dad to get into investing to figure out what a monumental title is. Right? No, nobody loves tracking down a mortgage release on a bank that's gone out of business, right? Like all of those things, right? Nobody wants to deal with 14 heirs, two of them are out of the country, one's in jail, and like most people don't know how to do that kind of stuff. And that's sort of the niche that we fill in real estate. And so we stopped our wholesaling about a year ago. We stopped our coaching. And the only thing that we do now is like now we've converted our whole office to 6,000 square foot here in Chattanooga, and we're about to move to 14,000 square foot. And yeah, we run the largest transaction coordination company in the country.
It's amazing what you kind of wished for, and
Mhm.
now it may even get a little bit bigger than what you ever wanted. Uh,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, we always, once we decided we were going to do this, I'm always very intentional about like what the end looks like. But yeah, now we own actually two title companies now. One's a partnership with Investor Lift and one's our own internal title company. And the reason we started a title company is because as looking at, is dealing all these files, right? And last year we did over 2,200 files. This year we'll do close to 4,000. So it's a lot. Like we deal a lot of files. And even though we have 400 title partners who are, title companies who are our partners across the country, it's kind of like doing a JV deal, right? Nobody cares as much about your stuff as you do. So
Mhm.
we're always, again, like we swing a big stick in the title business, but still getting people to do work on our speed is, for our clients is tough. So we looked at it and we said, okay, well, why don't we just open our own title company? And then at least we have complete control over the deal and we can run it through just as fast as possible. So now we're licensed in Florida and Texas, Arizona, Tennessee, Kentucky. I think North Carolina is next. So we're rolling out just kind of the biggest states volume wise that we see that we have a need for. So eventually
But
we'll be in probably the top
but
20 or 30 states.
that's specific to your title company. But what about the, your easy closing services? Is that nationwide, or what does that look like?
Yeah, yeah. Our transactions company, yeah, 100%. Great question. That's nationwide. And that was very intentional too, right? Being a transaction coordinator, not near the amount of licensing that a title company is.
Mhm.
But I really knew two things. One, if I'm dealing with you and you're in West Virginia, you could get a deal in Maryland, right? You could get a deal in New Jersey, you could get a deal in Ohio. So we knew that we couldn't start and just be in some of the states. So we knew, okay, great, we've got to be in all the states, which is a challenge, right? I'll tell you, right? There's lots of different states out there, right? Attorney states, escrow states, abstract states, like every state feels like they do something just a little bit different. And then even beyond that, there's 3,100 counties who love to do shit just a little bit different. So yeah, we knew from day one we were going to do deals in all 50 states. And then the other thing was that real investors do different types of deals, right? We couldn't just be wholesale deals, right? We knew we had to be wholesale and novation and sub two and notes and wraps and owner finance and lease option and whatever types of deals, because that was what I did, right? As an investor, like I did real deals. And so I always approach this business from that point of view, right? Like what really, and in the beginning I thought I was just starting it for me and some of my friends. But so we always had those as kind of core values, core guidelines of, every state, every transaction type, all of our coordinators are going to be certified by me and my team. So like they have to prove that they understand how to do all these deals before we'll put them on the phone. And then the other thing, as I looked at it, I'm like, okay, if I was the client, right, and I want them to trust, or I want to trust the transactions company with my deal because these are, big deals. It's life-changing money, right? 30, 40, 50, 100. We've got one that's about to close. It'll be our biggest of the year. It's like 240,000. So like I wanted to make sure that our coordinators cared as much as our client does. So what we did is we put them on like a blended pay system where they get a salary plus a little commission every time a deal closes. So what that does is that incentivizes all of our coordinators to really push, to make sure that these deals are getting over the line. So I always tell people, one, you'll have better control with us. We're going to get more of your deals closed. Can we get them all closed? Absolutely not. There are some that are just such a rat's nest that like it's going to be 3 years in probate and it's a $2,000 assignment fee. And I'd be like, Derek, just, I don't know that this one's worth the juice is worth the squeeze here, but if you want it, we'll keep working on it. So, sometimes you just can't get them closed. You get a seller that just decides I'm not going to sign anything. And, nobody can force them to do that. But yeah, it's been wildly successful.
Well, that's awesome. Just from my own experience, I don't keep track anymore. I've closed thousands of deals
Yeah.
in 21 years, and it's actually interesting now trying to remember some of the addresses from
Yeah.
even a few years ago. But the thing that I've experienced is I've dealt with a lot of title companies,
Hmm.
and I have relationships with a couple that are really, really good. They'll
Hmm.
bend over backwards, they'll solve all those problems. But when I'm forced to deal, especially when I was in the lending business,
Yeah.
we had a hard money lending company that my former business partner still runs.
Hmm.
But dealing with all of these different,
It's
like
brutal.
you said, counties, title companies, we were lending statewide in the state of Wisconsin. And so the question I have for you is, what does that look like? How does a new client come in and work with you
Mhm.
with their transactions?
Yeah. So we do something unique. So again, we've looked at what other people have charged, right? And there's nobody that had ever done it. It still hasn't done it scaled out like we do. But there's small, like regional people. Some realtor offices have like one coordinator that might handle 3 or 4 agents. So we looked at what other people were charging, and the lowest person out there charges, I think it's like 849. But if you go into some of the Facebook groups, like the sub two group, my God, some of those coordinators will be 15, 16, 1800 for a deal. So I looked at that and I'm like, well, that's crazy because a deal is just a deal, right? I get it. Some are going to be more complicated than others, but we're just going to treat them all like a one deal. So I said, okay, we'll charge, less, right? We'll just charge less and we'll do this at scale. But the problem is that most people don't realize is almost 40%, sometimes 50% of deals never close. They just
Mhm.
never close. So, what happens for us is you send us a contract and we're kind of getting deep into the weeds of the business, but you send me a contract, like we have to go to work immediately, right? It's going to come to us. We're going to assign it to one coordinator. That coordinator is going to be assigned to that deal till the end. We're going to get it to the right title company in West Virginia that does novations, right? That we know will close this deal. But then, we're going to jump on the phone and we're going to call your seller. Hey, Mrs. Smith, this is, Claudia. I'm working with Derek on your deal over here at 123 Main Street. Hey, Mrs. Smith, I'm going to be your point of contact from here all the way to closing. And um, great, because I want you out. I want you to go do your thing. Go get your next deal, go sell your deal, get out of the weeds and go do the stuff that makes money in your business. And then, then we've got like this 5-page, we call it like an intake document. So great, Mrs. Smith, I need to ask you some questions for the title company so I can get you paid just as quickly as possible. Perfect. So in that list, that just basically tells us where the problems are and what we need to start to fix, right? Who else is on the deed? Is there a bankruptcy, foreclosure, liens, is it a mobile home? Like just all those types of things. But the reason I have to go do that so quickly is because I have to assume you're going to assign this deal tomorrow. Great. But we know 40% of deals up to 50% may die. So 50% of the time we're working for free. Well, that sucks. Hard to get a coordinator to work for you, as fun of an office as we have, nobody wants to work for free. And they're also not going to want to do your deals, right? If you keep sending those types over. So we looked at that and I'm like, okay, the only option is one, I can send you a cancellation fee, right? And that sucks because you just had your $40,000 deal not close. And I'm
Mhm.
going to send you a cancellation fee of $300, which is what everybody else does. So I talked to a mentor and I'm like, well, what can we do? And he's like, well, why don't you just make it like a subscription, like a magazine subscription, where you can do so many deals per month, do it for them even a little bit cheaper, right? And then not that way you don't have to charge them, a cancellation fee because you just have recurring revenue and you know that you're gonna stay a client. So that worked out amazing. People love that. So like our base level right now, 1 to 5 contracts, it's 1997 a month, which is less than $2,000. So if you were to do 5 deals, it's $400 a deal, which is literally half the price of anybody else. And you're not going to have any, cancellation fees and, just none of that stuff. So that's the model that we went to. It works really, really well. Our clients love it. And the other thing that we do that I've been talking about for a few years, and a lot of people have started to adopt it, is we'll teach all of our clients how to put a transactions fee into their selling contract.
Hmm.
So what they'll do is they'll basically pass that charge on to their end buyer. So, and this I got out of a mastermind too, like years ago, kind of a little different usage, but basically where the basic idea came from. So, most of our clients will do like a 750 transactions fee. Some do like 999, which is crazy. But if you did 5 deals and let's just say you did a 999 transactions fee, you're going to make an additional 5 grand,
Mhm.
but you're only paying me 2. So what happened? Well, you've taken the worst part of your business that you hate and you've turned it into a profit center, which is great,
Yeah.
right? So I've got some people that actually charge the seller and the buyer and are making $8,000. So it can be an incredible profit center, and you don't have to interview and hire and run ads and train and manage and do all that stuff. And you can literally have the best team in the country closing your deals for you. It's just an absolute no-brainer.
Well, I love that, and I will tell you that we do all of ours in-house,
Yeah,
and it's a pain in the ass.
it
It
sucks.
really is.
Terrible.
And yes, I have staff and employees, and so I'm not necessarily the one that has to, but I still have to be the point man. I still have to
Yeah.
worry about did this get done or not get done.
Yeah.
So
And then,
I love that.
yeah, somebody goes out, they're sick, they quit, they have a baby. Now you've got to replace them. Whereas with us, I've literally got 18 of them here. Like I'll switch one in for another one, and just it's seamless to our clients.
And they're all in-house in your
Everybody's in
building, or
house.
you have a lot of, you don't have virtual?
I don't allow virtual. Everybody is in office, which is hard because
Yeah.
finding good quality people that have real estate experience in a town of 300,000 people, like we've got them all. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I don't. And that's me. I'm an old guy, so I like people being in the office. But really, even our people appreciate it because, somebody's got, a problem. We're kind of set up into teams. So someone's like, "Oh, I've never done a foreclosure in Indianapolis." Oh, great. Oh, Susie's done it. Great. Here's exactly how you do it. You don't get that kind of teamwork in Slack and on Zoom. It's not going to happen. All right. So
No,
no, we really like everybody being in office.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm that way too. Yes, we have, most of my staff is virtual, but I require them even when we have a meeting. I want everybody's cameras on
Yeah.
because it just
Oh yeah.
drives me crazy when it's just not personal enough,
Right.
or
Right.
somebody's not paying attention.
Yeah,
But
that's the worst thing. I try to tell that to people when I'm doing I'll go into a big coaching group and we'll come in and talk about whatever. I'm like, guys, turn your cameras on. Like the speaker gets energy from seeing that you're paying attention. It's so hard to just look at a camera and just talk into that camera and just see names on a screen. It's terrible.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. I want to be respectful of your time as well. Um, what's one question, and it can be related to anything. What's one
Yeah.
question that I should have asked you that I didn't?
Man, hmm, you know, um, I think maybe like why, of those 40-50% of the deals, like why they don't close. And really what I think it comes down to, I think a lot of people's acquisitions process is a little bit loosey goosey, where people aren't asking the right questions like, oh, who is on the title? Like I'm not saying you got to do a deep background check, but I see like a lot of these deals where they don't realize that, oh, it's just like one of the nine heirs that's trying to sell this house, right? Or they don't, they clearly are looking it up on PropStream and they're like, oh, John and Susie Smith, but they're talking to Bob. Well, great. Who is John and Susie? Oh, well, they're my parents. They passed away. Oh, great. Are you authorized the person to sell the house, right? So, on the title side, I see a lot of um, lack of questions that are answered there or asked there. And then also on the acquisition side, I think 50% of those deals don't close. They don't close because they're at the wrong price, right? So they're at the wrong price because, again, some acquisitions guy or gal is so interested in getting that contract signed that they're not paying attention to, they ask, something like, how's the kitchen? Oh, the kitchen's great. And they move right on. Oh, great. Tell me about it. And had they told them about it and learned that it was stained plywood cabinets with a laminate top with the metal band around it, they'd have been like, oh, we're probably going to have to budget $30,000 or $20,000 here to replace this kitchen. And they wouldn't have offered as much, right? So those are probably the two places that I see. And unfortunately, a lot of it's in the acquisition side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just putting bad deals under contract.
and that's what I was just going to mention. It's uneducated or inexperienced people that you don't know what you don't know. So
Right.
we're not sitting here judging anybody, but
Yeah.
it's a fact. It,
Mhm.
when you go through enough of those issues and challenges, as you and I have over the last 20 plus years,
Yeah.
it does become second nature. Like we've seen the end of the movie so many times that,
Yeah.
the cliffhanger is really not a cliffhanger for us,
Mhm.
but for many, many people, it's still, they just don't know that they should have asked more questions.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's not like you and me like came out of the womb knowing that we needed to ask these questions. No, we screwed up enough.
oh yeah, we got our
Like,
asses
oh,
kicked.
yeah, oh, I couldn't sell this house because the repairs were worse than I thought. Oh, shoot, I didn't ask good questions. Let me start asking better questions, right? So you can go do 100 deals and lose 50 of them, or you can hire a coach, right? And somebody that can shortcut that process for you. Like you're going to learn one way or the other, and you're going to pay one way or the other. It's going to either be, tens of thousands of dollars in lost deals, or, you can hire a coach for a fraction of the price that has done these things that can give you that kind of shortcut to the second floor.
Yeah, education is never free. I don't care what anybody
No.
says.
Yeah.
I don't even want to know. I mean, I know how many millions I've
Mm.
lost when
Yeah.
the markets crash and everything else. So my
Mhm.
education, I'm sure I could have paid for Harvard many, many, many times over if I was smart enough to go to Harvard.
Yeah.
Um, but it's led us to where we are today. And
Mhm.
you've got you've got easy REI closings because of what you went through.
Sure.
I'm leading Generations of Wealth because of what I went through. And if we
Right.
hadn't, nobody would even know who we are.
That's right.
If we would just quit, or if you wouldn't have spent that, you know, agonizing night on a mattress in the heat of June in Chattanooga,
Ugh,
good Lord.
brutal. Yeah.
But that's what I think is a blessing now, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So
I don't ever regret, any of the decisions that we made or, any of the things that we went through. It's just part of your story, right? It's the thing that makes you who you are. So I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's great to learn from it. Like, hey, I'm not going to do that again. That was kind of dumb. But no, it's all part of the journey.
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody wants to work with David and his team, just go to thegenerationsofwealth.com/transactions. We'll have a link there, so everything will just take you right to his team. And I know from our previous podcast episode that we recorded and the time we spend today, I look forward to getting to know you more and honestly, I think I'm going to end up being a client because I don't like the transaction
Oh,
shit
dude,
at
I
all.
I tell people I run the biggest company in the country and I wouldn't want to do it every day. Like I love like helping our team solve problems, but it's just a grind to do it every single day. And once if you're gonna do one deal a month, not a big deal, right? Like you can certainly do that. You don't need us. But if you're going to get to two or three deals and you really want to scale, like that's really who our ideal client is.
Mhm.
We've seen it over and over and over again. They come in doing one, two, three deals, and 6 months later they're doing five, six, seven. Right? We had one client and this is far, to the extreme, but he came in doing $97,000 a month, which is an incredible number. And 3 months later, he was up to 750 because he had his whole team now. Instead of like his dispo and acquisitions, people trying to do transactions, now they were just focused on getting deals, and the growth was just amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. David, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time.
yeah,
We've been
pleasure.
going quite a while now,
Oh
and like I
yeah,
said, we could keep going. I have no doubt about that. But man, any last comments or words as we
that's it, man. I
wrap it up?
appreciate you having me on. I'd love to come back again and talk about some more stuff, whether it be marketing or wholesaling or whatever you want to chop it up about. But yeah, I just I don't have time to do a lot of mentoring and coaching anymore. So I do love to try to get back on podcasts and events and speak where I can. So always happy to do it.
Well, we appreciate you coming. And for everyone listening, thanks for listening to the Generations of Wealth show. This is really an honor for me to get to spend time with people like David and bring his knowledge and his experience to your ears. And come back next week for another great episode. Please go out on anywhere you're seeing this, listening to this, share it, like it, give us all the 5-star reviews you can, help us grow our network, and go live your vision, love your life. See you on the next one.
Thank you for joining us on another insightful episode of Generations of Wealth. May your newfound knowledge help you in leveling up your own strategies to get through the many obstacles to your money-making processes and bring you much closer to the financially secure life you truly deserve. Continue filling up your accounts and further polish your financial tactics by listening to more episodes of the podcast at thegenerationsofwealth.com. Because in your wealth building journey, there is no other way to go but up, giving you the chance to finally live your vision, love your life. That's all for now. See you on the next one.